After a short break, we are back with another CAT 2022 RC. So this is slot 3 RC from the science of the tech genre. So as always, let's look at the questions first. The first question is what I call a meaning question. We can see from these quotes that this sentence is something which will be given in the passage, and we need to find essentially the meaning of it. So it's not, by meaning question, I don't mean a vocabulary question, but the meaning of perhaps a metaphorical phrase or even a sentence from the passage itself. So we'll have to understand it in the context of the passage and then answer. So we can just remember the words bionic convergence. That's something which stands out here for me. So when I come across this phrase, then I'll pay a special attention to that paragraph. The second question is an inferential question. It's also being made a little tricky. This was a common tactic in CAT 2022. None of the following statements is implied by the arguments of the passage except, which can essentially be sort of like, taken like a double negative and eliminated to say that which one of the following statements is implied by the passage. So again, this whichever is in line with the author's view would be the right answer. So we'll solve it at the end of the passage. Another meaning question, there's a sentence given from the passage and which one of the following best expresses the point being made by the author here. So it's not something that we can just read right now. We'll have to read it in the context of the passage and understand. What I'll probably do, remember the words apparent veil. We can definitely write it as well. The first question is something that we can keep open. So we don't need to write bionic convergence, but apparent veil is something which I will write down so that whenever it comes, it's just a reminder. Another inferential question in the fourth one, which of the following sets of words or phrases best serve as keywords to the passage? So we basically have to understand the passage and try to find which of these options is sort of capturing the main things we discussed here. So a couple of meaning questions which we can solve in between and a couple of inferential questions to be solved at the end. So now let's start with the passage itself. Nature has all along yielded her flesh to humans. So nature is always like, given whatever she has or whatever it has to humans. First, we took nature's materials as food, fibers and shelter. So this yielded her flesh is now becoming even clearer. We've taken fruits, vegetables, crops and all as food, fibers, probably things like cotton and all, and shelter again, probably things like wood and stuff like that for homes. So that was the first thing. Then we learned to extract raw materials from our biosphere to create our own new synthetic materials. So probably something like fossil fuels, right, which we extracted and then used it to create synthetic materials. Now, Bios is yielding us her mind. We are taking her logic. So first was all these materials, raw materials and all that we took. Now we are also understanding nature's mind. So let's understand a little bit more about it because just this one sentence is not sufficient. Clockwork logic, the logic of the machines, will only build simple contraptions. Truly complex systems such as a cell, a meadow, an economy or a brain require a rigorous non-technological logic. We now see that no logic except biologic can assemble a thinking device or even a workable system of any magnitude. So now the author's point that Bios is, giving us her mind or we are taking her mind becomes a lot clearer. Essentially, for us to have complex machines, we need to use the sort of logic that is used in nature. So, in a cell, in a grass meadow, an economy, of course, again, a society of people coming together probably from that perspective and a brain, right? So, complex systems cannot work with the sort of logic that we have for machines. They need logic similar to nature. Now, another thing we can understand out here is, we start by saying nature has yielded her flesh, her materials and all. Then when we say now Bios is yielding us her mind, we can also infer that this Bios is nothing but nature, right? Both of these are being used in the same context. How do I understand that? If you just see, right, there are 2 or 3 things that we've taken from nature and now this is the next thing that we are taking. So probably the words Bios and nature are being used interchangeably. So just note down a little bit. So the logic of Bios or of nature is what we can use to build complex machines. It is an astounding discovery that one can extract the logic out of Bios out of biology and have something useful. So this is something which is an astounding and astonishing discovery that we can actually use this. Although many philosophers in the past have suspected that one could abstract the laws of nature and apply them elsewhere, it wasn't until the complexity of computers and human-made systems became as complicated as living things that it was possible to prove this. So it was only once we had computers and complex human-made systems, we could actually use this natural or nature's logic and come up with more complex machines. It's eerie how much of life can be transformed. So far, some of the traits of the living that have successfully been transported to mechanical systems are self-replication, self-governance, limited self-repair, mild evolution, and partial learning. So replication, self-governance, repair, evolution and learning, completely or in parts, are all things which have been extracted out of BIOS, extracted out of nature and been replicated in machines. Now, thus far, we've not come across either bionic convergence or apparent veil. So let's keep reading. So what we've understood so far is that nature's logic is the only thing which can be used to build truly complex machines. It's something which has already started. Complex machines are being built probably with the help of computers and so on. We have reason to believe yet more can be synthesized and made into something new. So this is not the end of it. There can be more, there's more potential, there can be more that can be done. So I'll just probably put a diagonal arrow to show that this can go even better. Feel free to use whatever symbols work. I definitely recommend symbols and short forms, like if you see the way I've written machine out here, to cut short the time take. Yet, at the same time that the logic of BIOS is being imported into machines, the logic of Technos is being imported into life. Now, my students already know this. Anytime you have a word like but or something, yet and while or even however, right, could be in the beginning of the sentence. Just imagine how you would write the sentence if it would start with but, right? So if you would use but. So that would be something at the same time that the logic of BIOS being imported, and this is where the but would come. So the second part of the sentence is what we need to pay more attention to. This is something which is already being told to us. It's not contrasting in the sense the meaning is not different, but instead of BIOS into machines, we are saying Technos, which probably means technology being imported into life. So it's something which is like, the opposite, right? Just as we are taking nature and putting it into machines, now we are taking technology or machine logic and putting it into nature or into life. So let's understand a little more about this. The root of bioengineering is the desire to control the organic long enough to improve it. So this is nothing but bioengineering. So just as we have nature, so just as we have natural logic going into complex machines, similarly we have Technos or technology, which is essentially going into living beings, right? The idea being to improve them. So what does this mean? What exactly is it that technology is doing? So we have a couple of examples to understand this better. Domesticated plants and animals are examples of Technos logic being applied to life. The wild aromatic root of the Queen Anne's lace weed has been fine-tuned over generations by selective herb gatherers until it has evolved into a sweet carrot of the garden. So we've taken something which was a wheat, right? Something which was not really useful. And then over generations and generations, it has been improved till it becomes a sweet carrot. The udders of wild bovines have been selectively enlarged in an unnatural way to satisfy humans rather than cows. Milk cows and carrots, therefore, are human inventions as much as steam engines and gunpowders are. Now, you might not know what bovines are. So, wild bovines or wild cows, how can we infer it? Humans rather than calves. So, something which is giving milk is typically for its child, in this case, calves. That's an easy way to infer it. You also have the term milk cows itself, right? So, since here we are saying milk cows and carrots already mentioned, we can infer that bovines must also be some form of cows. So, wild cows, their udders, right, the milk-giving parts, the milk-creating parts have been enlarged in an unnatural way, in a technical way, to basically satisfy humans. So, rather than, as much milk as the calf needs, cows are probably now giving even more milk, which we humans are using. So, these are a couple of examples so we understand how technology is being used. It's not the same technology as machines, of course. It is what is being described as bioengineering. But milk cows and carrots are more indicative of the kind of inventions humans will make in the future. So in the future, humans will have products that are grown rather than manufactured. So this is probably also what can be improved, right? So ultimately, most of the products will not be manufactured products. They won't be machines. They'll be products which are grown. So just as, complex machines can then be a lot more. Similarly, when it comes to improving the living again, there is more to be done. Genetic engineering is precisely what cattle breeders do when they select better strains of Holsteins. Only bioengineers employ more precise and powerful control. Now, to understand what Holsteins are, we can infer it from cattle breeders. Since they are cattle breeders, they're breeding cows. Holsteins must be a particular breed of cows, maybe, better strains, so maybe, the ones that are giving more milk or something like that. Right? Not super important, it's just a name. All we need to understand from here is genetic engineering and bioengineering is what is happening over here. And bioengineering is something which is quite powerful. While carrot and milk cow breeders had to rely on diffuse organic evolution, modern genetic engineers can use directed artificial evolution or purposeful design, which greatly accelerates improvements. So earlier it was something which was happening over time, right? So generations of carrots or that, that lace wheat thing, and similarly generations and generations of cows, they were just trying to select for better and better ones and so on. So that's how evolution works, right? One particular animal of that species will evolve a trait which is helpful, and it'll take a lot of time for that trait to spread across the entire group or the entire species. But now something even faster can happen. Directed artificial evolution. So it's not natural evolution where we are just trying to select for, that type of evolution which will help us. Here it's artificial evolution or purposeful design. So since genetic engineers mentioned, we can understand that, probably they can tinker with the genes. So for example, instead of waiting for generations and their generation, maybe they can play around with the genes and make the cows give more milk, or make fruits and vegetables even bigger in size or faster growing, or probably even disease resistant. I'm just coming off with examples from the from my own mind. The important thing to know here is artificial evolution is what is being used. So I'll just put AE over here. Now we've still not come to bionic convergence or apparent veil. So let's just read the last paragraph. The overlap of the mechanical and the lifelike increases year by year. So the mechanical and the lifelike or the living, there's a lot of overlap, and this overlap is increasing. So both are becoming more and more similar. Part of this bionic convergence is a matter of words. A really important same sentence. So let's understand why this bionic convergence or this overlap between the mechanical and the living, which is nothing but the machines and the living, why is that increasing, and why is it a matter of words? The meanings of mechanical and life are both stretching. So this is the explanation. The words mechanical and life, the meaning is stretching until all complicated things can be perceived as machines and all self-sustaining machines can be perceived as alive. So the meaning of the two, right? So there's a lot of overlap between these complex machines and the living, to the point that ultimately the machines and the living, they are essentially going to be more and more similar. So any machine will be alive, and all living things also will have some mechanical, so probably these aspects. So now we've understood that this bionic convergence, now it's just a matter of words, because machines and living things are becoming more and more similar to the point that ultimately they'll become one and the same thing. So let's look through the options and try and find which one expresses this meaning. So the question itself is, which of the following statements best expresses the point being made by the author? And this is exactly the point the authors made. Mechanical and life were earlier seen as opposite in meaning, but the difference between the two is increasingly blurred. This definitely seems to be correct. Overlap between the two terms, the terms becoming one and the same. It also implies that the difference is blurred. The difference is blurred means the difference is also reducing. So let's read on and see if we have a better option. Otherwise, we'll go for the first one. Mechanical and life are words from different logical systems and are therefore fundamentally incompatible in meaning. The exact opposite. Saying that they are incompatible in meaning is saying that these are two different things and not the same. So we can eliminate this. A bionic convergence indicates the meeting ground of genetic engineering and artificial intelligence. This is also wrong. This is not relevant at all. We are looking to compare machines or the mechanical and living. Whereas here, they basically taken genetic engineering. They've also, instead of giving us artificial evolution, they mentioned artificial intelligence. We did not mention at all in the passage, so we can eliminate. Bios and technos are both convergent forms of logic, but they generate meanings about the word that are mutually exclusive. The mutually exclusive means two things which are different. So dry and wet, positive and negative. These are mutually exclusive, right? A number can be either positive or negative, but definitely not both. Right? So this is again something similar to the second option, where we are trying to say that these two are different, but the author's point is that these two are becoming more and more similar. So we'll go with the first option out here. Yet, beyond semantics, now semantics is nothing but the same matter of words. So the words which are used are, or that study is called semantics. So beyond semantics, over and above this, two concrete trends are happening. Now what are the trends? Human-made things are becoming more lifelike, and life is becoming more engineered. So these we can see are pretty similar, right? So life is becoming more engineered is nothing but technos being put into living things, and human-made things or machines are becoming or behaving more lifelike. So it's somewhat of a repetition of the earlier point. The apparent veil, really important. The apparent veil between the organic and the manufactured has crumpled to reveal that the two really are and have always been of one being. So the apparent veil, the veil that seems to be there, it may not be real. Something which is apparent is something that, it seems to be there, may or may not be true. So the apparent veil, so the veil in between the organic and the manufactured has now crumpled. So the veil between the organic or the lifelike and the manufactured, which is the machines, so the veil in between them has crumpled, or some, which is something like, it's just disappeared. We can understand that it's a little bit of a metaphorical meaning. And what do we get? Now we realize that these two are and have always been of one being. So it's one and the same thing now. The manufactured or the machines and the living or the organic are one and the same now. Why? Because of this overlap which is happening. Bios logic is coming into machines and Technos logic is being put into living beings. So again, we need to just find an option which is similar to this meaning, that both of these are pretty much now one thing. Apparent reality and organic reality are distinguished by the fact that the former is manufactured. Now, apparent has been used in this, but it's being used for the veil that seemed to be there earlier. Why did it seem to be there? Because they've always been one veil. So there was really no veil. Even complex machines would also be living, and living things would also be complex of technology. Whereas here, apparent reality and organic reality, instead of saying manufactured reality and organic reality, the word apparent has been brought in here. Doesn't really mean anything, so we'll eliminate it and look for something else. Organic reality has crumpled under the veil of manufacturing. Another play of words, it's the veil between manufacturing and organic and not the other. So we're rendering the apparent and the real as the same being, again wrong. It should be the manufacturing and the living or the organic or some variant of those two. So both of these options, they've used words from this part, but the words have sort of been jumbled up in a way that the same meaning is not being conveyed. The crumbling of the organic veil, same thing again. So it's the veil between the organic and the manufacturing, not between apparent and manufactured reality. It should be the crumbling of the veil between manufactured and organic reality. So this again becomes wrong, and it's pretty easy to eliminate these three. If you just look at this clearly, understand it once, you can see that the words have just been jumbled up and made a hodgepodge in all the three options. Scientific advances are making it increasingly difficult to distinguish between organic reality and manufactured reality. This is exactly right? So the veil between the organic and manufactured is what is gone, which means that the organic and the manufactured are the same thing. So increasingly difficult to distinguish, again because they are becoming the same. So this would be the right answer. Okay. Now, okay, the second question. None of the following statements is implied by the arguments except, just made a little tricky. What it means is, which of the following statements is implied? How can I say that? We are saying none is implied except. That means none of these four are implied except for one. So only one of the following statements is implied by the arguments of the passage. It's just like cancelling out the double negative. So let's look at all the four options and try and find one which is in line with the passage. Now the authors use something which we've already sort of figured out. Natural or living as well as mechanical or manufactured things are becoming more and more similar. Why? Because the logic of nature, Bios logic, is being put into complex machines. At the same time that Technos logic or technology is being put into living things. So both are becoming more and more similar. The biological realm is as complex as the mechanical one, which is why the logic of Bios is being imported into machines. So the reason why the logic of Bios is being imported into machines is because biologic is better. It is much more complex than the mechanical one. So it's not as complex, it is actually much more complex. Clockwork logic, which is the mechanical logic or the logic of the machines, will only build simple contraptions. Truly complex systems require Bios logic. So this first part is wrong, so we can eliminate it, even though the second part is correct. So part of it is correct, but what they've done is they've just changed this one thing. They made it as complex instead of saying that it's more complex. So it's about 90% right, but that one thing makes the meaning better. Historically, philosophers have known that the laws of life can be extracted and applied elsewhere. Now, here what's being told is many philosophers in the past have suspected that one could abstract the laws of life and apply them elsewhere. Suspected, I'm having a doubt, I'm thinking this is something which is possible. Known means I'm sure of it. It is something which became true only after computers and human-made systems and all came. So it's a small distinction, but it's definitely a distinction. Only if the other two are wrong will we come back to this. Otherwise, we'll eliminate this because known and suspected are different. Genetic engineers and bioengineers are the same insofar. In this aspect, they are the same. What is the aspect? As they both seek to force evolution in an artificial way. This is definitely true because both genetic engineers and bioengineers are trying to do the same thing. Essentially, they are trying to improve living things, right? The logic of Technos is being imported into life. The root of bioengineering is the desire to control the organic long enough to improve it, and even genetic engineers are going to use artificial evolution. So both of them are trying to force evolution in an artificial way. One is through artificial evolution, the other is basically through selective breeding, fine tuning over generations and enlarging in an unnatural way. So this is definitely something which is correct. In this aspect, genetic and bioengineers are both the same. So we can eliminate this option as well because this bit is definitely wrong. Purposeful design, which is this part, artificial evolution. Purposeful design represents the pinnacle of scientific expertise in the service of human betterment and civilizational progress. Now, this is something which is accelerating improvements, but this is definitely not the pinnacle. The pinnacle is like, the height or the apex. There can be nothing more. This is the best. But we know that yet more can be synthesized. We know that the overlap of the mechanical and lifelike increases year by year. That means there is something still to come. This is not the pinnacle. This is definitely something which is going to happen in the future, right? So it's quite an extreme sentence if you see. It's the pinnacle in the service of human betterment and civilizational progress, meaning that this is the best thing which can be done. So it's a little bit too extreme on the positive side, which is not mentioned. It's something which is happening definitely, but can we say it's the best thing for humans, or it's like the highest when it comes to inventions? Probably not, right? Nowhere has the author mentioned anything like that. So instead we go for option 3, that's definitely given in the passage. Now looking at the last one, we have an understanding of the passage. So let's look at all these keywords and find which one is suitable. Complex systems use biologic. Bioengineering takes up, requires technos logic, and convergence of basically bios and technos logic. Now here we have biologic instead of bios logic. That is one small thing to just see. If any of the others are better, we'll go for that. Otherwise, this seems quite fine because it's spoken about bios logic, technos logic, as well as the overlap between them. Nature bios, nature or bios is the same thing. Technos, okay, we have nature bios. For technos, we should have something like technology or bioengineering or something. Self-repair, Holsteins. The second half is something which is not making sense. Self-repair is one of the things which is happening, self-replication, in all of these, self-repair is one of them. So there's not much point of putting just one aspect which has been replicated. Similarly, Holsteins are nothing but one example probably of a breed of cows. So these two are not as important. So this we can eliminate. One's definitely better because it has the key parts of the passage. We have the same issue in the third and the fourth options, complex systems. Carrots, milk cows. Now, complex systems, which is basically using bios logic. Instead of mentioning carrots and milk cows, we could have, mentioned organic or living or lifelike instead of just giving examples. The examples don't convey as much, like, what are carrots and milk cows here. Convergence, technos logic, again, bios logic is not mentioned, only technos. So some of the, parts are fine, but it's not put in this order. So, the bios part and the technos part and then the convergence. And the examples in between just don't make sense. There should have been maybe bios logic and just an explanation of what these are, living systems or something, and these two could have been then swapped. Like if you see, technos logic itself is more for carrots and milk cows. We can eliminate it. Same issue here, nature, computers. Okay, computers are using nature's bios logic. But again, we are back to carrots, milk cows, genetic engineering. So the main points, bios logic, technos logic, convergence, is something which is given only in the first option. So we go with that. So that's it for this passage, and I'll see you in the next one. And in the meantime, if you want to practice, do jump over to mockat.com. You have a few free lessons, daily quizzes, mocks, and we also have a free Telegram channel with daily reading and the author's viewpoint, which will help you in answering inferential questions and prepping more for CAT. So all the best to you.